this week's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Sticky Note Conversations. Before we get started today, let me tell you a little bit about our guest, Dion A. Johnson. During an amazing 32-plus year barber stylist career, Dion has been blessed to work with an array of clients from blue collar to white collar, from professional to the street, from young to old, from father to son, and grandfather to grandson. Between haircuts, Dion became a self-published author and released his first book in July 2024, titled Revolutionary Vision Boulevard, a memoir reflecting on his childhood recollections on a street named Bloomfield Boulevard. Dion lives by a new mantra. Every day we should learn something new. Every day we should do something new, and no matter how big or small it is, we should share it with someone else so that they can do the same thing for someone else. Please enjoy this heartfelt conversation about community and history with Dion Johnson.
Dion, thank you for coming to hang out.
Yes. Good evening.
Question for you. I was reading your bio and you thought about doing journalism. So what was your attraction to wanting to be in the journalism field?
What was my attraction? So in high school, well, actually it started in middle school, I was doing the school newspaper and the yearbook. And it kind of took on a whole new life. When I got into high school, became a beat reporter. Found that interesting. And then just being interested in people's stories. And then engaging into what's next. Like, what's the next party or the next, game and stuff like that. 'Cause I did some sports writing, did a little, school dance kind of thing. So this, I think I fell in love with that. I think the entertainment thing was good. So journalism came and then blossomed, and after high school, I started writing for a magazine called the Pontiac Progressor. Same kind of thing, writing about beauty shows and sports stuff in the city. But same kind of energy, same kind of thing. Just meeting people and liking community and enjoying community.
So it sort of sounds like you have a little bit of a curiosity about other folks and what they do and how they do it.
Yes.
So is that what, because I'm seeing a correlation between journalism and barbering. I'm calling it barbering as it's a verb in that way. But thinking about cutting hair, especially black men going to the barbershop, it's always a thing, like it's an event to go, and then y'all might sit around for some time, some hours, and shoot the shit basically, and talk all the things. And I know you can't tell me everything I'll talk about in a barbershop, even though I'm really quite curious. But going into that line of work, what brings you satisfaction from it?
So it's a couple of things with the barbering thing. Of course, you want to make people look nice and all that kind of thing. But I like my thing with what I've done is when you raise different generations. Granddad brings in the son, and then the son brings the grandson. So I've had a situation where I had 3 generations, and you watch kids grow. For me, I think one of the thrilling things if you go to a kid's graduation party, say, "Well, Mr. Dion, I've heard about you. You've been cutting my grandson's hair for 15 years and blah, 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 blah." And so for me, it's that connection. It's an interpersonal connection. It's just not a haircut. It's more like a relationship, And for me, I just take a lot of pride in that. It's iron sharpen irons at times, but yeah, when you're giving back to the community and you're kind of help raising some kids, maybe kids that don't have a father in the home or a granddad or uncle who's there. So I take pride in just being that guy, part of that village, if you will. I call it now my new life team, Building a life team of somebody you can rely on, not just a haircut, but talk about things, right? Personal stuff, school, girls, that kind of thing. So it's a black man's country club, but yeah, for me, it's more enriching, It's giving back to community, not just by cutting hair, but also by engaging into their lives,
So when did you decide to become a barber? Did that happen?
Yeah, 13 years old. My dad used to cut our hair when we were little, and it took him about 2 hours to cut our hair. Same haircut all the time. So one day I decided, you know what, I'm going to see if I can do this thing by myself. Now, we grew up in a time when you're not supposed to touch dad's stuff like he has. So when my dad got home from work, he looked at my head and he walked around. He said, "Who took you to the barbershop?" I said, well, okay, I could tell him should I tell him I cut it? Because I might be into some trouble, but I said, I'll tell him. So I cut it, Dad, and he's like, what? He goes, well, I guess I'm not taking you to the barbershop anymore. And like I said, I was about 12 going into 13.
So you did a good job.
I did a good job. So, but better than him. So I don't know how good it was, but it was better than him, and it took a lot less time. But then it grew into cutting the friends hair on the street, down in the basement kind of thing. But same kind of concept, right? You have the Black Man's Country Club, and everybody down there kicking it, and they were really my guinea pigs, really. But it was cool. We manifested into that, and just had a little cool time getting to know each other on that kind of level. So Hollywood became the neighborhood barber, if you will, or the street barber in that neighborhood, because but street barber. So, but yeah, so that's how that started. Dad was the at-home barber, cutting his son's hair, and he just took too long. So
you took matters in your own
hands. Yes, ma'am. Real quick.
And so, by being a barber, I know that there are a lot of conversations in the barbershop. Usually, especially around political season, folks are having a lot of conversations about politics and what have you. What are you feeling? What are you hearing and discussing in the barbershop when it comes to the state of the world right now for Black men?
Well, those of us who voted for the sister, because not all the brothers voted for the sister.
That's true.
We now that some of the brothers who voted for the other man, the orange hair guy, they said, "Oh man, what did we do? What happened? Why you didn't get the memo? You get the memo about all the stuff they were talking about, what he was going to do." And so right now you hear people kind of reflecting like, "Oh man, I made a mistake," and we're all going, "Yeah, you did," but now we're in this crap, right? So for us, I think that. It showed us that how some brothers just won't vote for a woman. That was huge for us going through that whole thing in the barbershop, because we all thought we were on the same page, but clearly we weren't. So for me, I was kind of thrown off by that a little bit. I was raised by a beautiful, strong Black woman, and grandmother as well, and I know most of my clients, they also were raised by a strong Black woman. So
what do you think that? What do you think that space is?
I'm lost with that, right? So we get this thing about how only to a certain extent that a woman should be this or a woman should be that. A woman shouldn't be president. So for the Black community, I think that was really big for us, just to learn that aspect of how some brothers think about a sister leading. And then some of those get to the point where, well, if she's a president, that means she runs my household. Now, I thought that was very strange. Now, if you're married and you got a wife and kids, and you demand the household. Just because she's president doesn't mean she's running your house. And so it got a little weird, but right now I think a lot of people are trying to do damage control.
Are you concerned as a business owner of the current climate?
No, not really. I think a lot of us business owners, we kind of run our own little destiny. Of course, the tariffs hurt us when it comes to supplies and that, but we just kind of, as Black folks, we just kind of make it through, right? We just do what we got to do and keep it pushing. I feel for the younger generation, because a lot of them are hooked on to certain kind of things, right? Gadgets and Gazmos and PlayStation and that kind of stuff. So, I think for us, older seasoned folks, we weather the storm a little better. And for me, I feel like that we just move forward. Our ancestors and everybody moved forward. We didn't go backwards. We moved forward. So I feel like whatever they throw at us, we'll be ready. We just move, right. We adjust. So for me, that's how I feel.
I want to ask you again, when we talk about voting and how some Black men didn't feel like they could vote for a woman, and I'm sure that went for both Kamala and Hillary. And thinking about the Black community specifically, and how this is a time, as much as any other time, that unity is needed, and that collective unity needs to come from both sexes, not just Black men coming together. Like, there's that group that needs to come together in a lot of different ways, and Black women come together in a lot of different ways, but then collectively supporting each other and supporting a collective vision and goal of like, and figuring out like, what does community need for us? How do you think we get there?
That's a great question. We were talking the other day about Dr. King and Malcolm, and how, you know, a lot of people thought that, you know, they were on these two separate islands, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was they were coming together, and we all know what happened, right? They were assassinated. So I think we're in a state of emergency where black folks are trying to figure out, you know, who's the next black leader, who can lead us to the promised land, you know, how do we come together? So there's a lot of people out there, grassroots, doing a lot of different things, but they need to come together more. I feel like if we have all this social media and stuff, then it should be easier to link it. But then we have an issue too that people are saying black and proud, but I don't want to lose my job. So, you know, if I go out here and I wear my Black Panther badge or a t-shirt, will I get ostracized? Well, you know, will I lose my job at GM? You know, some brothers are feeling that way right now. Like, I want to be down with the movement, but I don't want to ruin my career. So it's you know, equal sacrifice is not what's happening. I don't think people are in a position where they want to, you know, lose their career. You know, we just talked about how, you know, the orange-haired guys doing all this stuff. So if you feel like you're secure and stable, but yet you want to be part of the movement, then, you know, nine times out of 10, that person's not going to join. And that's what happened in the 60s too. Everybody wasn't even with both movements. Somebody was with King and somebody was with Malcolm. But some people were sitting on the couch. Not a lot of people were involved in the movement. So I've learned that along the way, as I'm doing my research about my godfather, who was Malcolm X's attorney, and I've learned that not everybody was down with the movement. They felt nervous. People were getting assassinated, so they didn't want to take that chance of, you know, saying they're the next leader, because, you know, he said if a king killed King, he killed Malcolm, he'll kill me. So we are in a tough situation. I think that is just history repeating itself. You have certain people, black and proud, and you have certain people sitting on the sidelines, and then you have that gray area. It's all good until we get fired, you know.
Yeah,
to that body house. So.
Well, and that's the thing, right? That's scary, because one of the scariest things is not having stability, financial stability, economic, whatever. And so if you are trying to, you know, live your best life, whatever that looks like, you don't necessarily want to disturb that, but also knowing you're not really living your best life,
right,
because things can always be better if we collectively make change, right? So I do get it, and I do understand that, and it's a conundrum that, you know, a lot of folks face, but at the same time, how are we doing better for the next generation?
Ooh, yeah, so it started off with the youth. So everything starts with the youth. You know, youth have all the energy, right? You know, us seasoned folks.
Have more than I do.
Yes, and me as well. So, but we have the wisdom, and we're seasoned. So they need direction. You know, a lot of times they need directions. And so when they come to me, I kind of give them a little direction, and we kind of move together. When we had the George Floyd situation, there was times my clients were asking me, you know, will you come march with us? Can you come protest with us? And I did. You know, I'm out there with some high school kids, you know, super foxes out there. But I felt that it was a situation that affected everybody. And I felt like if I don't go with them, then it shows that I really don't give a dang. You know, George Floyd was more closer to our age than he was to the kids. And so it's usually about the kids. You know, they're young and vibrant and fearless. You know, and for us, we've been knocked around a little bit. So we understand that sometimes it's good to sit down and kind of, you know, be behind a tree, kind of, you know, see what's happening. But I think for us, I think we have to be real mindful of what's happening with our youth. And I think that a lot of them are a little naive to the simple fact that everything's not going to go their way. Yeah. And so
it's the balance.
Yeah.
It is a balance, and I've talked about on this podcast before my children, and how sometimes like they have this energy to like just try something, just do something, and not worry so much about a safety net or whatever, because they also know they have a safety net with me. But and then me, I'm like, oh wait, what you doing? But I think that is also that a part of it is, you know, what we've learned, because we've already bumped our heads more than once, and we've bumped our heads in ways the children may not even know about, right? And so it makes us more cautious and gives us wisdom, and then them, but sometimes not having that cautiousness is how they get to the next space, because they need that. So there's a yin and yang to it. And so I consider myself now less raising children but coaching them, because my kids are of adult age. In age, not necessarily where they are, and they're still learning and they're young. But you can't parent them the same way, and I find that to be a really sort of weird space to be in, of trying to parent young people who have their own bills.
I'm there. I'm there. I have two of those myself, so I know that.
So that's it. I'm the coach on the sidelines with the whistle, like hoping that they remember the play that I taught them when they get out there, and that they don't get hurt. But all I am is standing on the sidelines, jumping up and down and sort of yelling a little bit. And then, hopefully they do. We win the game, whatever that looks like.
Well, it's a balance, right? I think a lot of times my young adults know too that dad's good at giving them rope, but I'm always holding on though. It can be 3 miles away, but I'm still holding on. That's what a Papa Bear does, right? So, you're ferocious when you need to be ferocious. You're loving when you're loving, but you're always there. So for me, I feel like the same thing when it comes to the rest of the youth. I'm part of that village, and you have to do them the same. The more you open yourself, the more transparent you are with the youth, the better you are. As a parent, we know how that works. But it works the same way for everybody else, too. And a lot of kids don't have that. So for us, it's just like you're adopting more kids. No, we're not trying to raise more, but yeah, you want to teach them. I think that's important. It's important for us to do that. And
you mentioned that some young folks may not have father figures in their life. What do you see as your responsibility for the community?
Well, I think my responsibility, I was saying this the other day, I had a lady come up to me at their signing, and she said, we've been coming to the library for years, but it was never been a black man that came and spoke about his book. We've never seen that before. So I told my daughter and I told my grandson we're going to meet this Mr. Johnson. So the grandson was 6 years old, but the grandma was explaining to me about how, they have the LeBron James fans and they have, Chris Brown fans or whoever, but she said, we're raising him a little different. We want him to understand what it means to get your education or making a difference in somebody's life. And I told her, I said, well, my books are really more about history and storytelling. If we got an orange hair guy in the White House talking about, we would do away with black history. So my thoughts are, I need to do that. I need to put it in a book, put it in digital form, and tell that story. Because if we don't tell it, it won't be told. So I feel that God has got me on the mission to tell the story. I've been telling it for 34 years in the barbershop.
So I want to talk about your book, but specifically, and I've read quite a bit of it. I'm going to make sure, hold up, Revolutionary Vision Boulevard, because I have to do the
revolution.
Right. One of the things about this, it feels like a memoir. It feels like history of a community, of a neighborhood, of various families that live together. Would you consider yourself a historian?
Somebody told me that you're great, just great storyteller. But I think for me is that when you somebody said, well, I don't see too much bad stuff in here. I said, well, it really wasn't.
Were they looking for bad stuff?
The people are looking for bad. If somebody threw somebody or hit them in the head with a rock and they start fighting, that kind of stuff. But
you need that struggle story. Okay,
right.
Gotcha.
I said those stories probably happened, but for the most part, it was 95%. It was a lot of love and a lot of fun that we had. It was a utopia on that street, and so for us, I wanted to highlight that. Just because we don't have the last name or we don't look alike, don't mean that we can't get along. So. That was very important because we got more things alike than we have disalike, right? So I feel that the book is a memoir, but it's a lot of history. But it also shows it's a blueprint of telling people how they can be different and still get along. It's a powerful book.
And so you talk about, I would like you to talk about,
okay.
But you were born in Pontiac,
I was born in Detroit.
You were born in Detroit. You were born in Detroit,
Yes.
but then your family moved to the suburbs.
Yes.
And so, why did they want to move to the suburbs from the city? And do you recall them talking about why they thought this was a good move for their young black family?
Absolutely. So my mother worked for Detroit school district. My dad worked for Chrysler in Detroit. So they bought a house down there just after the riots. But my mom and dad felt that the city wasn't moving fast enough for us rebuilding. Then my grandparents said, "Hey, we got a lot behind us. Why don't you guys come and build a house up this way?" And they both did this way and made that move. Now,
And what city was that in?
and that was in Bloomfield Hills.
Bloomfield Hills, okay.
Interesting enough, as we know, it's a nice little drive from Bloomfield to Detroit. But my mom made that commute for 20 years.
About 30-ish minutes, would you say?
Give and take, no snow.
Right. And probably a little longer back then.
Yeah. So what they did, that's that perseverance about, okay, we're going to move to an area where your kids get a better education, different environment, but yet still going back and forth every day, putting the work in, right? Both of them. And so I look at that, and I tell people all the time about when you make those kind of things for your family, those kind of sacrifices. It's monumental, Don't know where I would have been. I mean, I went back down there for barber school, of course, but different feel. It was different feel,
Do you feel like a different sort of black man because you grew up in Bloomfield versus growing up in Detroit?
Well, yeah. So who knows how the story would have went if I would stay down there? But I was real close to Pontiac. We have family in Pontiac. We call it Baby Detroit, some of us. But nevertheless, so it was a good balance, We were, all black church. All black this, all black that. So everything around us, it was still cultural. My parents never believed in whitewashing anything. So, but as I said, I think my life was just truly blessed to be able to come up here, be a part of the community, a community at large, a great community, especially in Pontiac. Going to an amazing church, meeting amazing friends there. I'm still friends with those guys to this day and those ladies. And so for me, I can't see it being any other way. And I'm glad it happened the way it did.
And you went to high school in Bloomfield.
Yes.
And so if I remember correctly, you were one of the only black people.
We were it was sparse, yes.
And so, and what years were you in high school?
What years I was in high school, I was there from 85 to 89.
Okay. And so what was that like? What were the 80s like in Bloomfield?
Oh, well, the 80s were cool, right? So we had hip hop and everything. So black folks were shining. So I don't know, but we were in the minority, but we ran everything because all the kids, all the other races were looking at our our style. They loved our music. So we were doing well. I think the 80s for me was probably the best time in school because the focus point was on us. Just us and our culture. Michael Jackson and Prince, right? It was nothing better with a friend of mine, a white guy who got a Michael Jackson jacket. And next thing you know, he's moonwalking. That kind of thing. So for me, I think that when people are always talking about how, did you all get along? Yeah, we got along great. But I think a lot of times people get the misconception about how different cultures, eyeball. It's like we didn't want to be like them, but they wanted to be like us. And so we were at a big advantage. And so, and still today, I think it's still the same. You see more people cheering for, the basketball players, like I said, LeBrons, or for the rappers and stuff like that, than you do on the other side of the fence. You get a lot more white kids going to rap concerts these days. You see a lot of white folks wearing Jordans. So I think that when you look at what's happening, especially in Bloomfield, the kids there they wanted something spicy. They always wanted some little pepper on their food.
You having them seasoned things.
Yeah, so we brought the Lorries.
So in thinking about this book, I want to actually ask you, how long did it take you to write it? You said you've been telling the stories
Yeah,
for 34 years.
Well, yeah. So if I wrote that book by myself, probably about 9 months. I had to include some folks. So it took me about 14, 15 months to finish. But
why did you want to write it?
I wanted to write it because I wanted to tell a story about our parents, all of our parents, and the sacrifices they made, and our grandparents about the Great Migration and the sacrifices they made for their kids to get up here. So it was one of those kind of linear stories. But like I said, it was really paying homage to the parents and the grandparents. Everybody on the street had a mom and dad in the house. Just about. A good friend of mine who just passed, Rodney High. He just grew up with his father. His mom passed when he was a baby. But everybody else had a mom and dad, so that was another thing that people were like, oh, everybody got mom and dad, house, and we sit down and eat dinner together and they pray together, and so that structure. I want to talk about that structure, how we got away from that structure. I think that a lot of these young folks, they don't know anything about eating dinner together, or praying or play clothes and church clothes and school clothes like we did, right? So for me, it shows you that time capsule of how, if we get back to that, we get that more unity that you talked about earlier. I think that that's what's lost in the community right now. They don't have enough glue. We all had the same thing, same rules, same butt whipping, same punishments. Everybody had the same. Everything was the same. Nobody had more than somebody else, and if they did, we didn't know it. So that book shows that.
And so this book is about how many families?
18.
18. So just to give a synopsis, you decided to sit down in 9 months and write a book that told an excerpt really of 18 family stories of who lived on this street in Bloomfield through the 70s and 80s, basically. And you wanted to show how beautiful life was and how folks worked together and they had this community.
Absolutely.
How do we get back here? How do we get to Revolutionary Vision Boulevard?
I should have named it Blueprint.
Right.
Because it's really a blueprint. And there's somebody asked me, what did I learn by writing the book? And I thought that was a very interesting question. But it was powerful because I learned a lot. All the students that grew up on the street before me, they went through a totally different situation in the 60s. They were getting in fights with folks and getting spit on, and it was all kind of stuff happening to them. And so when I was writing the book and they were telling their stories, it was really powerful because we never talked about that kind of stuff, right? We playing basketball, riding bikes, shooting hoops and all that kind of stuff like that, but no one ever asked them what happened to them when they were growing up in the 60s in Bloomfield. So powerful stories. So it was an eye-opener for me. Humbling eye-opener for me because they paved the way.
Do you think that the Nime struggle story doesn't get enough of a spotlight as the struggle? Like you can't really be a black man if you ain't been shot at and been to prison and how many baby mamas you got, that sort of thing. Like there's this very strange space that has become almost, it's stereotypical obviously, but almost like par for the course, like that has to be in someone's story. Like if you don't have this big struggle story, then you could never have made it into anything. But to say you lived like the Wonder Years,
pretty much,
because that's what I thought about was like, well, the new version of the Wonder Years that got canceled way too soon, but that you had this beautiful upbringing that you wanted to celebrate, and not to say it was all glorious. There's room for a good butt whipping in here and all of that, and even some tinges of racism of kids in school who wouldn't want to sit next to folks in the cafeteria, but overall a wholesome childhood.
Absolutely.
Surrounded by other black folks.
Absolutely.
And in a safe environment. So yeah, it's a question in there somewhere, but it's also just like how do you parse that out to people who say, "Oh well, you had it easy. You ain't have to do nothing." Like,
I tell people all the time when they talk about that silver spoon.
Yeah.
I said, no, we had a plastic spoon. It's a plastic one. I said, yeah. I mean, look here, we knew about government cheese.
but you feel just as black as everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, we knew about powdered milk. We weren't eating Grey Poupon. We were eating yellow mustard just like everybody else out the package sometimes, right? But no, I think when somebody talks about questioning somebody's blackness, I always say, what does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, I didn't know I break dance. I did all that. I eat my watermelon and do my thing, right? But I think for you had to get shot at. You got I went to jail. I was on traffic tickets, but I went to jail. But my point is that does that mean that I'm black? Do I have to have a certain kind of experience to be black? Like my mom used to say, what is that? What is that black experience when we're talking about black excellence? And that's what they taught. They taught more about black excellence than we talk about black experience, because that's what they believe in. Doing right, being respectful, getting those grades, taking care of business, doing what you're told, do your chores, all that kind of thing, right? The blueprint. And I think for me that if we lead with that, then all the other stuff's gonna fall off. I think as black people, we need to think about that. We kings and queens, and how do they act, and so I feel like, when we have black folks going at black folks, then that's where we lose, right? Because we need to be teaching them how to be different. And they're not saying, well, we're trying to be white. No, we're not trying to be white. We're just trying to be right. And so for me, like I said, the book highlights that. It talks about those kind of things. But I feel like the fabric of the black community is dying when you don't have the basics. And respecting themselves is number one, right? You got to respect yourself before you respect others. And calling people out their names and all that kind of crazy stuff. We weren't doing none of that. And so for me, I think that it worked, right? You look at the statistics of, somebody who grew up in community and everybody did the same thing. Everybody had to be held accountable. Our parents held us accountable, but we held each other accountable too. And so I think that, when you have that kind of a bond, it's very powerful. As I said, and the more I wrote about it, the more I appreciated it. Because there's so many people, so many kids out here that don't grow up in a neighborhood like that, and they're lost. Because somebody didn't grab them, and somebody didn't shake them, and say, hey man, that's not what we do. And so we just got to be better with that. I think right now that's community is bad to a point that they can't even speak to the kids. They're worried about getting shot, to your point. Stabbed or something, a retaliation for you telling the kid to pull his pants up. Or talk about that cussing. Let's not smoking in front of your grandma. That kind of crazy stuff. So I think for me, being a seasoned brother, I think that we just need to get back to that some way, somehow. We got to figure it out. A lot of things too start at home. Everything starts at home. I had a good home at home as far as on the street, but I also had a good church family, and that meant a lot, because when you get it 24/7 and it's not at school, that's what you want, a well-rounded person. And I just don't see that's happening right now in the community. I don't see it. We're missing some stuff.
And what did you most take from your upbringing that you then instilled into raising your children?
So same thing, the principles. The principles of being respectful to yourself, loving yourself, loving others. Same foundations in the church. That was very important to me. Like I said, a lot of my good friends are my church members. And it's very important to build a good foundation. So with my kids, they had the same thing, and you see that when you meet them, you'll say, oh, I can tell these kids were raised good. But it takes both parents too, right? It takes the whole village. I can't just say it was just me, but she had a blueprint too. The mom had a blueprint too, but same kind of blueprint. And I think that was the most important for me, to make sure that we instill that in them, put those foundations down, and so when they have kids, they do the same. If it worked for us and it worked for my parents, then it should work for them. And so that's just it was a blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. And you're married. How long have you been married?
I've been married now for 4 years.
4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how has marriage changed you as a black man?
Oh, okay. Well, how has it changed me?
Or has it changed you?
I mean,
or has it?
Well, that's a great question. How has it changed me? Well, it hasn't really changed me, but it has taught me to make sure I'm more in tune with the young folks and where they are about marriage. Mm-hmm. You don't hear that too often. People want to get married, these young folks, mm-hmm. or have kids. So I think that's very interesting. I don't think when I was a little kid I wanted to be, I wanted to be married, but I knew one day I wanted to be a parent. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's good to go hand in hand because it's good to have both, right? In the household, it's good to try to have that balance. But yeah, I don't think it changed me. It keeps me on my toes.
Okay.
I would put it that way.
Okay.
It keeps me on, but everything's balanced.
Mm-hmm.
You got to know how to balance, and I'm pretty decent at balancing. So.
And Will, who is our music producer for the podcast, told me that someone in your family who recently passed away, that they were over 100. That was your aunt?
My grandma.
Your grandmother.
Yeah,
okay.
My mom's mother. Yeah.
So tell me about her. I would love to know, for somebody to have lived that long.
Yes.
And she lived long enough to see you write this book too. So I'd love to hear something about your grandmother.
Okay, well, Granny. Granny was kind of like the E.F. Hutton. You ever heard about E.F.
Mm-hmm.
Hutton? When he spoke, everybody listened. Mm-hmm. She's a woman of little words, but when she spoke, it was powerful.
Did she bring y'all to Michigan, or was she?
No, actually, Granny. Well, no, she came from Tennessee, mm-hmm. And then my mom was born in Illinois, mm-hmm. because she went up to Illinois, and she came over here and moved to Pontiac, got married, and all that kind of good stuff. But they were here for a very long time. But yeah, 106. Everybody says, "What's the secret? What did she do?" I said, "Grandma, she never worried. She never stressed about stuff. She was very cool, calm, and collective."
How did that work?
She had a Superman husband.
Okay.
My grandpa's deceased, but he was a man in the house. He took care of business. But I was messing with her one day, and I was talking to her about my career and barbering. I said, Grandma, you did 40 years at the hospital, right? She was a nurse. And she said, no, I did 25, and I was out of there. I said, wait a minute, 25 years? I said, you've been retired all this time? So she's been relaxing. She's been enjoying life. She had a great life. She traveled. She did her thing, but she just didn't worry about nothing. And she always did everything status quo. Everything was systematic. But this is a powerhouse of a woman. I think a lot of grandkids were afraid of her, but I wasn't. I was wrap my arms around Granny, give her kisses all the time. But I think everybody was scared of her. But yeah, she just had that presence. Mm-hmm. And that presence was the black excellence presence. She believed in education. She believed in if you don't do that, you'll be doing something productive. And her whole mantra was just do something with your life, do something positive with your life. So kudos to Grandma. I think that was my cherry on top moment. She was the kind of person, if you tell her you're going to do something, then you better do it. So 3 years ago when I told her I was going to write a book, she kind of gave me this look, and I said, hey, I'm going to write it, Grandma, I'm going to write it. So when I got it done, and I went to see her, she said, I think you're the only person in the family who wrote a book. And I said, well, you would know, Grandma, because I don't know who else I would ask. But right. She said, no. She said, I'm so proud of you. So we flipped through it, but she just a no nonsense kind of granny. But she led by her mind, because she was so smart, but she led by her heart too. When you get the chance to know her. But she'll be well missed. She'll be well missed. It's a void in our family right now that I don't think that anybody's. She set that bar real high, right? 106. So
right.
I'm 53, so I'm like, okay, I'm halfway there. But 106.
I personally cannot imagine what it would be like to have been around for 106 years. thinking about the amount of changes that you would have had the opportunity to see. The good, the bad, and the in-between.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Did she tell a lot of stories? Was
did.
she open about her life?
My grandma was kind of a woman you had to ask her. So, if it was something that you wanted to know, you better ask her, because she never just voluntarily tell you. But I know that when she turned 100, she started getting a little antsy. She was talking about, I think God forgot about me. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, he took all these other people. So, our friends gone, husband, my mother, my uncle, so cousins, grandkids. And I said, well, Grandma, until the bus comes around to your bus stop and pick you up, then, so be it. But she got a little, I think she just got a little frustrated. And she was really getting frustrated in the last couple of years. She was ready to go, and she felt that the Lord, forgot about her. So when I say this, people say, "Oh, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, I'm happy that she's gone, because I've seen the frustration the last 3 years."
She was ready.
Yeah, she was ready. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she was ready. She said, "I done did it all. What else is more to do?" But she was ready. She was ready.
Yeah, that would be difficult to bury your children and husband and to see all the people that you knew gone. I feel like that's the downside of having that long life. Mm-hmm. But also, she did get to see so many generations.
She did.
She did. Come forward. Thinking about your upbringing, your Wonder Years upbringing,
it was.
And the world that you see now. Mm-hmm. I always like to ask people about democracy. What is democracy? Mm-hmm. And do you think we currently have it?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a big question. So I do think we have it. How much of it do we have? That's a better question. When they talk about the glass half empty and half full, that's how I feel about democracy for us, for black folks. Because this thing can go either way. And it makes me a little nervous at times. My grandpa told me something back in 2006. He was back watching TV with a guy named Judge Joe Brown.
Yeah.
So he said, "Come back here. I'm going to see this." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "I'm watching Judge Joe Brown." I said, "I know you watch that." He said, "I don't." He said, "But they ain't here clowning." I said, "Okay." I said, "What's going on?" He said, he said, "I see something happening. You can't see it, but I can." I said, "What do you mean, Pop?" He says, "We're going to go back to slavery." I said, "Oh, no. We're not going back to slavery. Oh, can't do that, Pop." He said, No. Not that kind of slavery." He said, "Modern day slavery." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We're moving too fast." He said, "We got too many millionaires, too many CEOs, too many presidents, too many this, too many that. We're moving too fast." He said, "They never thought that when they opened up those floodgates for civil rights, affirmative action, stuff like that, that we would move so fast." And he said, "Now they're going to start changing the laws back." Now, that was back in 2005. So I said, "Well, Pop, I don't see that happening. We moving forward." And here we are. Affirmative action's gone, we're trying to change the voting rights, gerrymandering, all this kind of thing. So, but he saw it. He was born in 1992. Him and Granny were born the same year. But they saw it. They saw that the way black folks progressed, and how people were getting jealous of that, and envious of that. And we had that problem now. People think that, certain people, like I said before, hate us or not. They don't hate us. They're more jealous of us than anything, because they feel, man, we can try to burn them, kill them, lynch them, do all that kind of thing, but we still rise, right? Mm-hmm. Great mind, John Angelo said we still rise, and that's what we do. So for me, when it comes to democracy, I think it's very important as we tell these young folks to vote. They have to vote, they have to get involved, because voting does matter. There's been times when I was younger too, and I said, and it don't matter, but I've always voted. My voting record is pretty stellar. But I feel that the more we get them involved, the more they understand the power of voting. This will be important moving forward. The statistics of people not going out to vote, not caring about voting is a problem. When we grew up on our street, our parents voted, and they took us with them to vote. So that was already ingrained in us. Not just the big elections, right, but midterms, small elections. That's very, very important. So for me, I feel like if we all get on that boat, a lot of that stuff will get reversed, and next thing you know, we won't have voting rights. I think that's where our country's going. So so we gotta tighten up. We gotta tighten up. Our race gotta tighten up.
And how old are you?
I'm 53.
53. Okay. And so at 53, what is your version of the American dream?
Ooh, I don't know if the American dream and the black dream is the same.
What's your version?
Oh, yeah. My version of any dream, I guess, it would be this more equality when it comes to everybody just kind of getting along. Meaning, like, we can have Chinatown, we can have a African town and things of that nature without having any issues. Why does it have to be where we have to be either a melting pot or we got to be separated? Why can't we have a little bit of both? You go places like Chicago or New York, and you see that. You'll see different kind of towns. Haitian town or Cuban town, but then you see, going to Saks Fifth, and you see, all that, right? So I think that we need to. I used to say all the time in high school, we get to a point where it's a black and white thing. What about all the other races? We have Latinos and Asian folks. Well, should we give them a chance to talk about their race? I used to call it, we used to ask for a multicultural day. We have so many different nationalities in our school. I said, but if you give everybody a chance to say something, because they feel a certain kind of way. Brown people are feeling a certain kind of way because they feel like it's always a black and white thing. What about us? So I think in my eyes, in my world, the more we understand each other and respect each other, the better off we'd be. I think there's a lot of misconceptions for a lot of different races. We talk about all these stereotypes and stuff like that, and I think it's kind of crazy. Some of it's funny, some of it's whatever, but at the end of the day, a lot of that hatred is really just jealousy. Can't dance like us, can't cook like us. they're not like us, right, Kendrick?
Right.
So
right.
That's what it is. But yeah, I feel like my daughters got married New Year's Eve to a Caucasian guy. I call my Italian stallion son-in-law, but he's good people, and I had that radar. I don't know if that's my Virgo side or my Leo side, but he's good people, and I feel like when you talk about color, and I say it all the time in my book sign, it's not about that for me.
Yeah. It's
about one thing, two things. Are you a good person or are you a bad person? If you're a good person, let's roll. Hop on the bus. If you're a bad person, keep it moving. So for me, that's my world. If there'll be a world of all these good people and we all get along and figure this out, or it's a bunch of bad people and we say y'all go ahead and y'all go over there. Y'all go to a different planet.
Right.
Yeah, let's do our thing right here. So.
And so before we go, I just want to ask folks who pick up your book, Revolutionary Vision Boulevard, what do you want them to get from this? If there's one thing that you'd want them to get out of
one thing
out of your and it's hopefully to get more than one, right? But
no, it's all good.
What do you want them to take?
I think family. For me, when I see what's going on right now with our race in our society, I think anything we got in that book is family. Just how to build a family, for good family structure. Because everything starts at home, and so we just need to get back to that. So many times we got coaches raising our kids and school raising our kids, but it starts at home. And that book tells you about let's start at home. Start with mom and dad. Let's start with love, really, respect.
Right, and your barber.
And yes.
Well, thank you, Dion.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming and having a conversation on sticky notes on the fly.
I appreciate
as
you.
We got to come hang out in beautiful Hazel Park, Michigan.
Yes, this is great.
I enjoyed the conversation, and we'll make sure that we have a link so people can find your book as well. And I assume that maybe there might be another book on the horizon. Have you got the bug to write some more, do some more?
Yes. So I'm currently working on a project. During the book signings, I've had the number one question was, how did all those families get on that street? Now, I know my little road, but they were like, no. How did your parents come up here from where they came up here and got on that street? I said, oh, okay, you're talking about from the South. So we're doing a great migration, are we? And then we're doing some other stuff. So, I'm writing a book about that now. It won't be as big and juicy as that one. That's a nice little steak right there. But this will be a very powerful book, though. It'll talk about the stuff that they went through, Great Migration, of course, Jim Crow laws and other things like that. So I'm working on that right now. It's as painful as it could be, Like I said, our ancestors went through a lot. Our parents went through a lot. Our grandparents went through a lot. So it's a deep book, but it's a good book, though. Coming out of the ashes, coming out of the cotton fields, and making their way to the boulevard. So I'm excited about that. So that's my next book, and then I'm working on another one too. So I'm actually working on 2 books at one time. So.
Okay, all right.
I'm look here. It's all about juggling and balancing.
Right.
So,
well, you really did catch the bug.
Yeah, I did.
I appreciate you doing that, and it goes back to, I think, our first love, whatever that is. It always comes back out in some way, and if journalism was that for you, and you took that winding pathway, but you still ended up coming back to wanting to interview people and tell their stories. So
absolutely. Yeah.
You're still doing the thing, and so I appreciate that. And it also made me think about my grandparents and part of that Great Migration, how they got to Michigan through my grandfather working for Chrysler and that sort of thing. But, I think about the amount of struggle that they went through to get here. And I think that's always something that folks should keep in mind, is the amount of struggle and strife that folks went through so that you could have an easier life, not to waste it, because it's so wasteful of their tears and their heartache.
That's real.
And they didn't do all that for us to be messy and ridiculous and not vote.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Agreed.
But thank you, Dion, so much.
Yeah, Tim. Thank you, too. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thanks so much.
And that is Sticky Note Conversations on the fly.
Sticky notes.
Yeah. On the fly. On the fly.
Your grandparents came up from the South?
Yes, they came from Alabama.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.